Chapter 5. When Tracker woke from a week of partying, he looked around and saw two female legs emerging from under the covers. He pushed away the covers, and one was lying on his right and the other on his left. It was hot outside, and the sun stood straight up in the sky. It has to be noon, he thought. He could tell by looking out at the sky. There were waves of heat, and the air appeared blanketed by a hot fog. He must be in Mexico, but he couldn't remember how he got there. Looking around, he saw his sparse cottage. One bed, one dresser without a mirror, and he stepped across the women and out of the bed to check on his motorcycle. For some reason it was parked in the front room. Maybe to keep someone from stealing it, he guessed. The living room had nothing in it but one torn brown leather couch and some religious pictures. He stood a few minutes gazing at the pictures. One he remembered because of his mother showing it to him. When he returned to the bed, he pushed one body aside who had been sleeping soundly, and she gave a small grunt and turned over. He just wanted to know if he recognized the face. Tracker needed to eat to keep up his strength, because by now he felt like shit. His dick limp, he looked down and thought, that has never happened before. There is always the first time if you try to fuck every female in sight, his father, Lycell, had warned. Tracker wandered into the kitchen and opened the fridge, and found there was an ample supply of fresh meat. He wondered how it got there, because he couldn't remember a thing. He pulled a piece out and smelled it. Goat, he said. I hate goats. But he placed a piece in his mouth. He walked around naked and raked his hands through his thick dark hair. Where the fuck am I, and who the fuck are those women in my bed? It wasn't the one from the bar. He couldn't remember them, but he knew if he had a hot shower, he would remember something. He didn't know what day of the week it was, or the month. Lumbering around naked and sluggish, he found the shower. He turned on the hot water, and stood under it for as long as he could stand it, and then he turned on the cold water. After doing that a few times, he walked out of the shower and sat at the bar, which separated the kitchen from the dining area. He looked around at the furnishings. He didn't remember renting this place. It was clean, except for the empty bottles lined up like trophies. Even now he had to question, what the fuck am I doing? He took a quick breath, and all he smelled was alcohol. It appeared to be coming out of his skin. He had been warned about drinking too much. It didn't mix with being a werewolf and shifter. He remembered Wilder, or his father saying that it would slow down his abilities to shift from human to werewolf. Tracker didn't need to shift now. There weren't any perceived dangers around him, so he said, fuck it, and reached for an unopened bottle of liquor and put it to his mouth and drank. He glanced around and saw his belongings on the bar. Laid out on the counter was his smartphone and pouch containing his money and Hunter's credit card. Over to the side of the bar, he counted 10 empty bottles of tequila. He turned to go back to the restroom and get a towel to cover himself. Still, everything was foggy. He remembered he had tried to call Thorn and didn't get an answer. He casually thought that it could be because Thorn and Zoey were making the best of their time together. After leaving the restroom, he entered the kitchen to get a bottle of water. He picked up his smartphone to check if there were any calls, and discovered that Damon had been trying to get in touch with him. Damon left a text message, "Where is Thorn?" He said he would be back home by now. Father wants to talk to him. Tracker closed his eyes and sighed. Calling home would certainly put a damper on his plans. "Where are you, Tracker?" Damon said after leaving a voice message. Tracker thought about not returning his call, because he thought Damon was being his usual meddlesome self. Because Tracker didn't know the day of the week or the month of the year, he made a call to Damon. "I'm in Tijuana," Tracker said when Damon picked up after one ring. "I'm leaving for Father's cabin," Damon said. "Where's Thorn?" "I left him in San Diego." "What were you doing in San Diego?" And where is that Zoey creature? She's with Thorn, and don't call her that. She's Thorn's mate now, so show her some respect. What the hell? I didn't believe him when he said she was his mate. You know what Father will say when he finds out about this. Don't tell him, Tracker said with a dry, hoarse voice. What day is it? But then Damon was known to say anything, and say it often. Sooner or later, Tracker knew it would get back to his father, and like always, he would have to shoulder the blame for leading his brothers off their path. To werewolves, their paths were clear and there was only one way, and that was for the good of the pack, and females were to nurture their mates and have pups, and comfort the werewolves during their time of need during the full moon. It's Friday. What month is it? Tracker asked, his voice masked by huskiness from drinking. It's the middle of October, Damon said. When I hadn't heard from either of you, Father is sending me to bring Thorn back. Well, you have your job ahead of you. He's not going back without Zoey. Can't we just drop her off somewhere and give her some money? She's not that kind of woman, Tracker said, annoyed at Damon. When the fuck are you going to get off your high horse? Tracker questioned. He would quote his mother. She didn't use the F-bomb in front of them, but Lycell sure did. They're all that kind. That just shows how much experience you've had with women, and you sound like a cynical hard werewolf. I pity the female you attract. Damon didn't like to argue with Tracker. He never won anyway. All I know is you and Thorn left the pack because of her. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm going back and try to locate Thorn. He should have been here by now or called. I have to go. When you get to the cabin, stay there until I return and do some hunting. I need some fresh meat. You do mean to eat and not to fuck, Damon said, getting in the last word before Tracker pushed the red button on his smartphone. Their conversation came to an abrupt end. Although he loved his brother, it was something about Damon questioning Tracker's actions that pissed Tracker off. In high school, he called Tracker out for ditching Sadia for the new girl in school, a girl that came to visit her mother and father, who were doctors, and she stayed for the summer. It was Tracker's last year of high school, and he thought he had fallen in love with her, but she had left without saying goodbye, and without him getting into her panties, and that broke Tracker's heart. He vowed never to love again. Tracker had partied and slept and fucked through almost 2 weeks, and now he needed to replenish his body. Not knowing his way around all day and night, he had weakened himself in more ways than one, and he needed a long rest. Tijuana, and drinking. However, he wasn't finished abusing his body, or abusing the 2 women who slept soundly, with a werewolf ready to ride them hard, until the next full moon.